fans of bass gear and gadgets. I'm Sean Fairchild for Bass Gear Magazine. Today we're looking at Boss's brand new GX-10 effects processor. Let's dive in. The GX-10 actually uses the exact same effects engine as the GX-100, and it uses the same color touchscreen interface as well, so several of the same components. It's basically a little sibling to the GX-100, but it packs all the same sounds. So if you're somebody who doesn't need the big full-size GX-100 unit, the big full-size thing with all the foot switches, this could be a really great option for you. It's obviously much more portable, but crucially for me, and we'll get into why in a little while here, it still includes an onboard expression pedal. The retail price for these is $399 at time of press. They were just announced in late October. As I'm recording this here, it is early November, and I had it about a week and a half prior to the public announcement. So I got to build my own patches and play with it. It's really a fun pedal to play around with, and fun is something that should be a crucial element to any piece of gear. One of the things that I appreciate the most about the GX-10 here is its user interface. So this is a touchscreen. And the first thing I normally do when I get a new effect processor to review or for personal use or whatever it is, anything that's complicated like this, is I run to my web browser and I try to see if there's some sort of PC editor that I can use to make all the choices and all the sound selections and things like that on the pedal, so that I don't have to kneel over and spend time twiddling knobs and going through menus and stuff like that. And the cool thing about the GX-10 is it does have a PC editor. It does have an app that you can use via Bluetooth if you buy the optional Bluetooth dongle here. But this is the first unit like this that I've used where the onboard interface is almost exactly the same user experience as, for instance, in this case, the app. So you can drag and drop items like this and do all kinds of, sort of mobile user interface language cues that you're used to using from your mobile devices. Lots of options here that punch well above what I consider this weight class to be, so that's fantastic. This would be directly competing with the new Fractal VP4, the Line 6 Helix effects. Those are two things that come to mind right away. There's a lot of added value with the built-in expression pedal and the Bluetooth dongle, as I was mentioning earlier. I do recommend, if you pick up one of these, to also grab the optional Bluetooth dual adapter, which, again, is this little guy right up here. You probably can't see very well because it just blends in so nicely. But it allows you to stream audio into the unit. So if there's music that if you want to play along to tracks, it's also great for practice. You can use it like a headphone amp. It's very convenient. Aside from that, that little dongle is what gives you the control via your phone, via other mobile devices. Has some other cool functions as well, such as expandability. So one of the trade-offs, with a really hyper-portable system like this is just not that many foot pedals, not that many actuators, not that many things that you can map things to. With the dual Bluetooth adapter, what you can do is add additional Bluetooth wireless devices that control this thing. The Boss makes a Bluetooth wireless expression pedal and also a 3-button foot switch that will speak with the GX-10, and you can use all of those additional buttons as assignments to turn on and turn off things in various ways. One thing to note here is I have this currently set up in the mode, I forget what Boss calls it, but each of these memories, a memory is what we would ordinarily call a patch or a preset. That's Boss's term for it. And a memory can contain up to 15 different effects. So the mode that I have this in right now allows me to control individual effects within my chain, which is kind of how I tend to use these things. I kind of use them as virtual pedal boards where I like to have things mapped to each pedal, each function. And in fact, you can see in this one, I haven't taken the time to map everything yet. So I'll go to one that does. All right, this is a stock preset, distorted rock bass. And you can see that each of the 3 buttons down here is mapped to turn on or off one specific element in this chain. And then you can also assign things to the expression pedal. And there's a toe switch on the expression pedal as well. You can assign up to what I believe is 20 parameters to each foot switch or each rocker pedal, each thing that you have, each actuator, to do up to 20 different commands with one press, which I think is not only very cool, but really critical on a pedal of this size. Now, to demonstrate what I'm talking about here, I made this really cool rock organ patch that I like. Sounds great, right? It's actually not, it's not a synthesizer preset. If I go into the effects by pressing effects here, you can see my chain. I've got the X-Comp compressor followed by the overtone block, which I think is Boss's best option for really nice sounding polyphonic octaves, both up and down. An amp model, a harmonist for sort of that very high-end kind of feedback whistle. Hopefully you can hear that. And then if you heard the tail there, there's a little bit of a shimmer delay. And if I kick on this guy, I've mapped that to turn on a little bit of reverb. Also a shimmer reverb. So we've got shimmer delay and shimmer reverb. I like shimmer. But what I was alluding to earlier about the coolness and the very high utility of mapping multiple parameters to one pedal is on the rocker pedal here. In fact, let me move over so you can see what happens. Watch this rotary block as I move the rocker pedal past about 10%, which I think is where I mapped it to. It turns on, off, on. So I've got it to turn on that block when I move the pedal a certain amount, but then past that point, I've also mapped it to control the speed of the rotating speaker sound. So let's hear it. Off. On. Charge. All right, here's another good example of that. I've done the exact same thing, but I've added one additional effect parameter to what the pedal is doing. So watch this yellow overdrive block as well as the ring mod block, which is selected right now. As I move the pedal past 10% or so, they both turn on. So one sound that I like to use in my own music, in my own stuff, is a ring modulator, the frequency of which is controlled with a pedal, a sweeping filter sort of sound. But it doesn't sound as good without a little bit of grit before the ring modulator. So I've got this set up to basically turn on the whole patch sound that I like for that one effect just by moving one item. And then past the point where these effects both turn on, the pedal is controlling the frequency of the ring modulator. it's a great way to find more utility and get more out of a pedal that doesn't have a lot of buttons for you to hit right out of the box. The GX-10 has really great audio specs. It has a 32-bit DA converter, so now that we're getting into 32-bit stuff, gain levels are ceasing to be important, or at least ceasing to be as important as they were, because the noise floor is so low, and you can have a signal that is so incredibly loud, you'll never make a sound that loud. So that's really great, and in fact, internally, it operates at 32-bit floating point, which is something that's awesome to see. It samples the incoming signal at 48 kilohertz, so better than CD quality. Sounds fantastic as far as I'm concerned. Boss didn't forget about us bassists. They actually included bass-specific stuff. So I think I counted 8 specific bass-tailored patches just in the factory patches, or memories. And there are actually 9 separate bass amp models and 21 bass versions of effects. Let me go into the effects palette and you can see what I'm talking about. I have this set up in such a way that all of the effects are grouped by type, and what that does when you look at it that way is all of the bass effects are all the way to the right of this upper row here. So if I select one of these guys, and I could drag and scroll, but I'm just going to use the select wheel here. If I go all the way over to the right, there'll be a little gap, and then all the bass stuff starts. So there's the gap, and then we start with X comp for bass, overdrive bass, X overdrive for bass, a bunch of these guys here, and there are 21 individual bass effects. And of course, many, if not all, of the non-bass specific effects sound really great too. You can actually tell the GX-10 that you're plugging a bass into it as opposed to a guitar. And it has polyphonic tuning as well. That is really accurate. It's accurate to 1/10 of a cent, so accurate enough to use for setting your intonation. And it's kind of cool to be able to just kind of hit like all of your 12th fret harmonics or open strings and see which ones are in tune all at once. However, I did find the monophonic tuning option to be a little bit more accurate, or perhaps more dependable is the right word. Interestingly, even though you can specify that you're playing a bass into the effect box, I got better results when I chose guitar. And that was regardless of whether I'm playing 6-string or 5-string and playing high or low. Especially noticeable with the octave effects. The octave effects had a lot more digital artifacts, a lot more sort of glitchy sounding stuff when I was set to the bass mode than they did when I was set to guitar mode. And the octave effects specifically that I found to work best regardless of the input type that I'd selected was actually Boss's new overtone. It may not be new, it's new to me. Boss's new overtone effect block, which in fact I will play for you. All right, I just selected the overtone patch that I created, which is actually using some parallel processing, and it sounds like this. So as you can see, I'm trying to basically confuse the octave up. I'm trying to play notes that typically don't sound good together and also add a lot of dissonance and confuse the octave up sound. But I can't confuse this. So it works differently on a native level than the harmonist or the pitch shifter does. I guess it's more of a sort of filter applied effect. So it works really, really well for not having any latency, for being polyphonic, and for working in any range with the bass. The obligatory. Specifically here in my effect path, I've got the overtone block followed by a graphic EQ that I was playing around with but actually left disengaged. So I could remove that, and then an amp model. And that is all aside from my dry signal, which is going on in this divided signal on the bottom here. The menu interface here allows you to do a lot of different things. This is where I've gone in and kind of customized the behavior of the unit to work best for me. So things like auto off, there is an option for the unit to turn itself off after a certain amount of time. I don't want it to do that personally, so I've turned that off myself. But lots of different control over behavior in here, from how Bluetooth works, what your in and out settings are. Now the output select is really cool because you can tell the GX-10 what kind of tailored output signal you want, from totally flat, which is like the recording output, to, for us bass players, whether you're playing through an amp with a tweeter or an amp and cab with no tweeter. So that's a really nice option to have there. And then there's a bunch of guitar options above that that also sound very cool. I highly encourage playing around with stuff that is not meant for bass players specifically, because that's where you can find some of the coolest tones. If we go into control and expression, here are some of the options for setting up what these pedals do and how they behave and what is tied to them for each patch, whether you want that to be on a memory, I gotta use the word memory, whether you want that to be on a memory by memory level or something global. Really flexible, really expandable, which is awesome. It's a bit of a Swiss Army knife of a pedal. It can do a number of things that you might have a use for, and it can do a lot of stuff that, in fact, I glossed over, such as it also has a looper, and you can have a looper aside from the 15 individual effects that you can have in each memory. So each memory can have up to 15 effect blocks, not counting the divider and mixer for parallel processing, the tuner, I believe, and the loop effect, or the loop option. So you can record up to 38 seconds for a mono loop. Most of us bass players are going to be doing mono loops. Found it very useful as just a quick little idea phrase thing, especially while teaching, getting down something chordal underneath something that I wanted to express over that. There are so many more points and aspects that I could spend another hour describing on this thing, but of course I don't have the time, and you don't necessarily have the time either. It is a very cool pedal that can do a lot. And in fact, when I was writing the review, one of the things that we try to do, as sort of music gear journalists, is develop personas or decide on who certain pieces of gear are best for. It was really hard, and this, trying my best to not sound like I'm being a company spokesman for Boss, because we definitely don't do that here at Bass Gear Magazine. In fact, we are the most objective, I think, that you will find. And if you've seen some of my other reviews, they can be less than positive at times. But without trying to sound like a shill for the company, it was hard to find somebody who wouldn't benefit, a persona who wouldn't benefit from the GX-10, unless you already have something like the GX-100 or the GT-1000. It can do so much for you that there's likely to be some element of its function that fits into your scenario. Well, folks, it has come to that time in our program once again where we have to part ways. We have to say goodbye to each other, and I'm going to miss you. I love our time. I love our little fireside gear chats. Thank you for joining me while I went over some of my favorite features and aspects of the brand new Boss GX-10. Make sure to read the full written review at bassgearmag.com. Lots of more thoughts in there. If you're watching this on YouTube, and you probably are, make sure to like the video and please subscribe to our channel. It helps us out tremendously. Plus, you get to know first when we drop new content about cool effects processors or basses made out of aluminum or amplifiers with green wooden cases. This got strange. I don't know why I'm voguing now all of a sudden, but that just happened. All right. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Once again, my name is Sean Fairchild for Base Gear Magazine. I'll see you next time.